He was one of the most misunderstood thinkers in human history, a quiet, sickly former professor who looked into the modern world and declared the death of traditional morality, warning that humanity was on the verge of falling into a terrifying abyss of meaninglessness. Friedrich Nietzsche did not ask us to follow him, did not build a religion, nor did he offer comfortable lies. Instead, he asked us to challenge everything we believe, to embrace our deepest suffering, and to forge our own meaning in a vast and indifferent universe. Born on October 15, 1844, in the small village of Rochen in Prussian Saxony, Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche grew up in a deeply religious Lutheran household. His father was a village pastor who died from a brain ailment when Friedrich was just 4 years old. Shortly after, his younger brother passed away as well. Surrounded by a home of grieving women, his mother, grandmother, and aunts, young Friedrich grew up quiet and introspective, deeply studious and fascinated by music, poetry, and classical languages. Nietzsche was an academic prodigy. His mastery of ancient Greek, Latin, and classical philology was so extraordinary that in 1869, at just the age of 24, he was appointed professor of classical philology at the University of Basel in Switzerland. He had not only not completed his doctorate at the time when the university offered him the post, which seemed an almost unprecedented achievement. He seemed to be destined for a long, brilliant career in academia. It was during these university years that Friedrich Nietzsche formed two crucial relationships that would shape his early thought and work. The first was his deep immersion in the works of the philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, whose gloomy view of life as a cycle of suffering deeply moved him. The second was his close friendship with the famous composer Richard Wagner. Nietzsche saw in Wagner's operas a rebirth of European culture, but as Wagner embraced nationalism and popular acclaim, Nietzsche grew disgusted by what he saw as cheap commercialism and anti-Semitism, leading to a painful and permanent break between these two men. Behind his early scholarly success also lay a body plagued by a crippling disease. During his brief service as a medical orderly in the Franco-Prussian War, Friedrich Nietzsche contracted severe dysentery and diphtheria, permanently ruining his already fragile health. From that point onward, he suffered from severe and agonizing physical ailments, blinding migraines that left him bedridden for days, in pitch-black rooms, chronic stomach hemorrhages, and deteriorating eyesight that made reading painful. In 1879, after a decade of failing health, Nietzsche resigned from his professorship, walking away from the stability of academic life forever. For the next 10 years, Friedrich Nietzsche lived as a lonely wanderer, surviving on a small university pension, boarding houses, moving constantly between quiet boarding houses in Italy and the cool altitude and solitude of Les Maria in the Swiss Alps. He carried a small notebook everywhere he went, whether it was to the Swiss or to the small or to the Italy. Walking hours every day just along mountain paths, stopping to only write down sharp, brilliant aphorisms as they struck him. He produced the works that would redefine modern philosophy, and the works that are still debated upon to this day. It was during this decade of physical agony and profound isolation that Friedrich Nietzsche produced his most explosive ideas. Some of them being, or I guess all of them, were first the gay science, or in the modern translations must be called either the joyful science or the joyous science or the happy science. Then we have Beyond Good and Evil, which is one of his most difficult works to pick up or to at least digest, and one of his most talked about works. Then On the Genealogy of Morals, where he breaks down what we consider morals and why do we consider them morals. And his poetic masterpiece, and actually one of his most readable and yet one of his most popular books, Thus Spoke Zarathustra. In 1882, Nietzsche published his most famous line, "God is dead." It wasn't a arrogant claim, far from it. It was a profound historical observation and a stark, chilling warning. Nietzsche recognized that as science, secularism, and the Enlightenment gained ground, modern Western civilization was dismantling its own traditional moral foundation. He saw that without those structures, humanity faced an unprecedented moral vacuum. A terrifying crisis he called nihilism, the belief that life holds no intrinsic purpose, value, or meaning. Of course, later on this statement exploded on Nietzsche himself as science developed over centuries after he died. People did not stop believing. People still believe in God, and he thought atheism would cover the whole world, especially the continent of Europe, which did not happen, as atheism is just at a world population of 8%. Afterwards, Nietzsche predicted that the 20th century would see massive, bloody ideological wars as societies tried to replace traditional religion with political dogma and state worship. To prevent humanity from collapsing into a despair or total tyranny, Nietzsche called for a radical re-evaluation of all values. He urged individuals to stop relying on herd morality, social conventions, or state authorities for their purpose. Basically meaning that Nietzsche thought that if ideology is all that carries people anymore and it's not religion, then people would kill each other just because of small differences or comparison. And we can clearly see that through the First World War, the Second World War, with Nazi differences, fascism taking over, which redefined modern philosophy with Nietzsche. To overcome the threat of nihilism, he introduced the idea of Übermensch, often translated as the overman or superhuman. The overman was not a political ruler or a physical conqueror, but a self-mastered individual who overcomes the despair of existence, creates their own values, and affirms life with absolute passion and creative power. A little bit like existentialism. Unlike many thinkers who viewed pain as something to be eliminated, Nietzsche argued that suffering was essential to human growth. To him, hardship was not a tragedy, but the raw material of human greatness. Just as a tree needs strong winds and harsh winters to grow deep roots, a human mind requires adversity to achieve true strength. He offered his readers a profound mental test, known as the eternal reoccurrence. Imagine a demon creeps into your room at night and tells you that you have to live your exact life over and over again for eternity, every joy, every heartbreak, every mistake, and every silent moment, repeated in the exact same sequence forever. Would you curse the demon in despair, or would you fall to your knees in gratitude? To pass this test required what Nietzsche called amor fati, the love of fate. It was not merely enduring one's life or accepting suffering, but actively loving every single second of it, the beauty and the horror alike. Tragically, the world took no notice of Nietzsche's genius while his mind remained intact. His self-published books sold very few copies, and he lived in near total intellectual isolation, starving for understanding and connection. On January 3, 1889, while living in Turin, Italy, Nietzsche's mental health broke completely. Walking through a Piazza Carlo Alberto, he saw a cab driver mercilessly whipping a horse. Overcome with grief and compassion, Nietzsche ran across the square, threw his hands around the horse's neck to protect it from the whip, and collapsed to the ground, weeping uncontrollably. He was carried back to his room, but his mind never recovered. For the remaining 11 years of his life, Nietzsche lived in a silent, catatonic state. Cared for first by his mother and later by his sister, Elizabeth, he remained completely unaware that his works were finally being discovered, translated, and praised all across Europe. On August 25, 1900, Friedrich Nietzsche passed away at the age of 55. In a final tragic twist, his sister, Elizabeth, who harbored strong nationalist and anti-Semitic views, edited and published his unfinished notes to align with her own political agenda, corrupting his legacy for decades. It would take generations of scholarship after World War II to strip away those distortions and restore Nietzsche's true vision. Friedrich Nietzsche left humanity with no comforting answers, no prepackaged rules, and no promises of an easy path. Instead, he left us an urgent, timeless challenge to stop living passively, to embrace our struggles as the forge of our character, to love our fate, and to have the human courage to become who we truly are. And that every time we silence a thought that could possibly be offensive or could generate a negative reaction out of the other, we suppress a part of who we truly are. Now, whether Nietzsche was right is something to discuss with yourself. Why did he say what he said? Was he just an egomaniac, or was he someone who was onto something? Either way, Friedrich Nietzsche is a kind of compelling individual, pardon my English, and this was his life, the life of Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche.